from Supreme Court. In a landmark ruling, Supreme Court has set aside Delhi High Court judgment exempting Tiger Global from capital gains tax in 2018 Flipkart deal. SC ruling has stated that US-based firm Tiger Global and its related entities are liable to pay tax on $1.6 billion exit from Flipkart, and they aren't exempt from the taxes under India-Mauritius DTAA.
Now, absolutely. Now, Pranav Saita from Ernst & Young has said that the judgment will be read with immense interest by shareholders globally, not just in India. Now, experts have stated that judgment could impact taxpayers seeking relief under various international treaties. So what does this ruling really mean for investors and taxpayers? We will discuss this on India Tonight. But before that, let's listen in to what founding partner at 314 Capital, Siddharth Pai, has to say.
A vast number of investors no longer look at the tax advantage or the tax arbitrage as one of the factors to consider investing into India. In fact, from 2019 also, most of the larger fund houses have either pivoted away from Mauritius to go directly to go to Singapore, to end up actually coming to India directly, to go through GIFT IFSC, which also came out into 2019 over there for that matter, or they're looking at other pooling jurisdictions like Dubai, etc., to end up actually investing into the country. Now, the biggest risk for the industry as of now is the uncertainty of whether the tax department is going to go back and start reopening previous assessments and start actually asking questions about the actual substance of the and the presence of the manager in Mauritius when the decision to make the investment or to divest the securities ends up actually happening. In fact, it's fair to say there are a large number of investors who have structures in Mauritius. Large number of them do end up actually facing a immense amount of tax litigation. So the joke among the industry is that investing to Mauritius is a lot like the song Hotel California. It's very easy to check in, but it's impossible to end up checking out and leaving. So that is something that's actually been part and parcel of it. Now, this agreement is looking into the future is not as much of an impact after all, because the industry has already seen the cracks in the Mauritius structure and they've already ended up pivoting. But the uncertainty of reopening older cases or actually looking at previous exits and all is something that's casting a massive ball across the entire industry itself.
All right, to understand a bit more, let's connect to L. Badri Narayan, Executive Partner at Lakshmi Kumaran and Siddharan Attorneys. First question to you, gentlemen, will be that this is not a retrospective judgment and the legality does not say that. But does this open the door to question India's trust on retrospective taxation?
Thank you very much again, and good evening to everyone. See, this is a very significant judgment. This is not a classical Vodafone kind of retrospective case issue, but this has significant impact for the tax community. Why is that I'm saying so? The earlier judgment of the Supreme Court very clearly stated that if a circular issued by the department specifically provided that a tax residency certificate of a country provided with the presumption, a very strong presumption, that the entity from where the transactions were happening were actually based in that country, and you did not really have to look beyond it unless the department was able to bring a lot of evidence. That was the binding way in which we structured all our transactions into India. Now, the Supreme Court doesn't say that the circular is incorrect, but says that subsequent developments have made this circular inapplicable, effectively saying that while you structured your transactions in the past in a particular way, things that have happened after 2018, 2019, when the India-Mauritius Treaty underwent a change, will now not protect you in a particular way with respect to grandfathering of certain investments that you have made in the past. And that is where it's a very subtle form of retrospective legislation that is now being questioned by keeping aside the whole issue of what the circular said, what the department's position was, what the intention was to retain taxation powers to different entities, but kind of going back on that. So that is really where the real concern is for investors and for companies.
Also, Mr. L. Badri Narayan, please help us understand. I'm sorry to say, L. Badri Narayanan, help us understand. does this ruling effectively pierce that entire corporate veil, so to speak, where, shopping structures are in place, making it a new standard for, let's say, Indian tax authorities from here on?
It does. It's a very significant one. We used to always say that form of a transaction was very relevant, and that once you had a tax resident certificate and certain director meetings were happening in a particular country, you really took it as a golden truth that it is that entity which is investing and that is the treaty which is there. This judgment allows the department to pierce and look through the structure and say that effectively who is controlling this entity. If it is a US entity which is effectively controlling this entity, we will set aside this entire certificate and move the burden of proof from the department to the entity to show that the transaction happened from that country. So effectively, we have kind of gone behind the scenes and we now want proof that this entity effectively operated from that jurisdiction, not merely based on documentation. And that is a very, very big step in this area.
And do you also expect some of the reopening of the past cases with the kind of judgment which is coming from SC? What are the red flags? At what point that tax planning becomes the tax avoidance?
Very good question. I think today we lawyers are talking about no longer talk about tax optimization. We talk about tax defendability. That's really the way the words that we have used. Like what I said, I think so. Two, three things. One is first is for the transactions that have happened prior to 2018 under Indo-Mauritius Treaty. I think they'll all have to be relooked at. There are significant concerns that the tax department has had with respect to investment through Mauritius. While they have grandfathered certain transactions where an Indian or a Mauritian entity holding shares in India, when it transacts in that shares, we will provide benefit. This was a transaction where a Mauritian entity held shares in a Singapore entity, which in turn held shares in Indian entity. And at the Mauritian Singapore leg, there was a transaction that is not being that's not being protected. I think there are a lot of transactions like that. There's a whole host of entities which are following Tiger Global with similar facts, which are pending in the High Courts and in the Supreme Court. And this will have a significant impact for that. This also provides the tax departments and owners to reopen past assessments which have happened of transactions prior to 2018, where exits are happening now, or exits are likely to happen soon, or exits have happened in the recent past. As you know, during COVID and post-COVID, we had a lot of investments and a lot of exits. I think all of those are likely to see a whole host of review. And finally, I think it will also mean that we as tax practitioners will have to re-understand and re-look at the entire gamut of tax optimization versus tax defendability. Tax havens have never been something that we have really been a big advocate of, but they have also been a source of huge amount of investments into India. So I think that source has gone away, but I think there could be a lot of headwinds for the companies or funds that have invested through this route.
Mr. L. Badri Narayanan, but is this decision, according to you, like a final nail in coffin for entities solely relying on some of these treaties that India has had for capital gains exemption or specific benefits, or is there still a structure? Are there any modifications possible that firms can still avail to get around it?
I first and foremost, like I said, the law in Supreme Court in India is never the final word. Okay, I expect Tiger Global to go for a review or a re-look at this case because of the significant nature of it. So we'll see if anything comes out of review. There are also similar factual situations which are coming up subsequently with certain different facts which can also have an impact. What this judgment really impacts are transactions where an investment has happened through Mauritius indirectly into India. I think there is a whole host of cases that we need to look at on indirect transfers, which are following from the original Vodafone and the retrospective amendment that we made. Post that, there was certain removal of retrospective amendments, And there are also certain changes that India has made with respect to protecting some of the old treaties. I think there is still some scope for us to be able to argue on some of these aspects. What we won't be able to argue is what we used to see as a clear cut shut case, that there is a circular, there's a tax resident certificate, there are meetings happening in Mauritius or Singapore, and therefore the tax department should not look into our affairs and be that. I think that part of the arguments probably are going to be diluted today. But I still feel that there is a few more things that we can argue and relook at in these transactions and structures.
Right, Mr. Badri Narayanan, although GAR is not mentioned the reason of this order, particularly in this case, but do you think that tax department will have scope to relook the cases with GAR too? And more importantly, I want to understand that will it definitely impact some kind of investment which was coming from these routes?
Two separate questions. I think GAR today is probably the most ambiguous tool that is used by the department, not only in this kind of situation, but everywhere. A GAR is a situation where there is a general anti-avoidance rule. If the purpose of a transaction is solely for the purpose of avoiding taxation, then a general anti-avoidance rules can be brought in. But you must understand that most transactions today have some kind of a tax benefit or a tax issue or an incidental tax benefit coming out of it. So I think GAR is used in many of these situations, not only in the case of investments into India, but on things like carry forward of losses, amalgamations, transactions between funds and entities, mergers, and so on and so forth. I think GAR is today going to be the most hot topic when companies are going to structure their transactions with respect to India, both domestically and internationally. I think GAR played a significant role in this case, though it does not come front and center in this judgment. This definitely influenced the judges with respect to the fact that if there is a tax avoidance or a tax deception instrument or a device being utilized by a taxpayer for the purpose of avoiding taxes both in India and also outside India to take a quick benefit, then this is something which is to be there. Now, this kind of sentiment is not only in India, it is also seen in other countries. There used to be something called a double Irish Dutch sandwich structure, which used to be there in Europe, where an investment through an Ireland entity, which is not a resident of Ireland, but registered in Ireland, could take benefit of tax avoidance measures. Many companies, big tech companies, used it for avoidance of taxes. Now that has been unraveled. The only difference being there the policymakers came in, brought out a legislation, and put out a clear basis on which they were going to not allow for that. That's really what we also want in this country. But tax department in routine transactions looking for these kind of tax deceptions with minimum evidence. The High Court says that the department has not really given us any evidence to show that these are not residents of these countries. Still, to be able to take these cases to Supreme Court and argue is where the concern is. And to answer your second question, whether this will have an impact on investment, two aspects to it. One, there are lots of companies and funds which have gone away from Mauritius post 2018 because the grandfathering was not available. Still, a lot of transactions I have seen post this also through Mauritius because large amount of funds were already set up in Mauritius, which have invested in 2021, 22. All of them are going to face some consequences. Second is on the Indian global circuit, when you are going for getting investments, these kind of judgments do not help. I'll be very, very honest about it. Tiger Global is one of the biggest funds across the world, and for it to pay tax on a transaction which are clearly before a Mauritian entity, Mauritian amendment happened, is not the best thing for our country. And it will definitely have an impact on the sentiments of investors who will say that where is the tax certainty? When can somebody say that I can invest large amounts of money, billions of dollars into this country?
Absolutely. So there is an uncertainty in the minds of the investors that is going to continue. But thank you so much. I'm afraid we are running a little short on time today. But thank you so much for your inputs and insights on this SC ruling.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Moving on, Zerodha co-founder Kamath has flagged concerns over the closure of Indian stock market exchanges on Jan 15th after trading was suspended due to municipal corporation elections in Maharashtra. Commenting on the decision, Kamath questioned the planning behind declaring a market holiday for a local civic election.
And Shivani, Indian stock exchanges are closed today for Mumbai's municipal elections. The fact that our exchanges, which have international linkages, are shut down for a local municipal election shows poor planning and a serious lack of appreciation for second order effects. And I'm not saying that this was mentioned by a post which was posted on social media by Mr. Kamath, and he said in his post further that it also tells you how far we have to go before global investors take us seriously. And there was a lot of discussion on social media after that post. So he questioned, is it merely a concern over a day of trading being lost to a holiday due to posts, or is there really a big deal behind this point? And to discuss these points, we have with us Sandeep Parekh, Managing Partner at FinSec Law Advisors. We also have Sunil Subramaniam and also Amit Tandon. Welcome, gentlemen. First, I want to come to you, Mr. Subramanian. For market participants, what matters? Of course, when this announcement came, first it was said that capital market will remain open, and just few hours before the election, it was announced that it will be a trading holiday for stock exchanges too. How do you read that?
I think that's precisely the problem. That is that it was not announced well before, so people couldn't plan for it. It's a sudden event, and so to that extent and the reason for the event does not seem to be of national importance, like a festival or a parliamentary election, for it to justify. So I think these are the 2 points that Nitin has pointed out, and I don't disagree with the fact that such sudden decisions in a few days before closing it, puts our plans out of whack for many people. But that being said, I think that we must be prepared for such events. Forget the cause for this, right? Suppose there's a death of a very important political leader. So naturally, a national holiday will be declared and this will be closed. That's not planned for. So market participants also have to adjust to these kind of sudden events, which are, I would say, out of control, right? They happen. This particular reason, we are not able to tie a logic to it saying, oh, it's a local election. But remember, that's a local election. Now, the point is that it's not necessarily true that India has to be open when the world is open and vice versa. 1st of January is a clear example, right? For where, the 2 markets behave very, very differently, right? And we have our Diwalis and they have their Thanksgivings. For Thanksgiving, they are closed, but we are not closed. So I think doesn't mean that 24/7 our markets have to be accessible to everybody. There are obviously different holidays for different jurisdictions. That's known. But if it is in the calendar and it's planned, we know when is Diwali holiday. That's the challenge.
The nature of it was not planned. And the second point is the nature of it was not national, like Diwali is a national holiday. Dashera is a national holiday. Thanksgiving is holiday for many nations around the world. So that was, it wasn't planned and it wasn't of the national nature. Now, coming to you, Mr. Sandeep, if you can help us understand, is it appropriate for a local government body to unilaterally mandate a shutdown of, national and international, trading infrastructure, or, the likes of organizations like NSE and BSE without formal consultation with the likes of SEBI or Ministry of Finance?
So I think, this so-called second order impact is, I think, exaggerated. I don't think there's some huge issue. Almost all the lunar holidays that we have are, they're frequently adjusted one day before, after. We've had instances in the past 2 years where there's been a banking holiday and not a exchange holiday, and vice versa. So, these things keep propping up everywhere. And I don't think that's, unlike other parts of the economy where, you lose productivity, there's nothing kind of, this very rarely there's something which can't be done the next working day, really. So I'm not sure there's kind of this huge international, outrage about sudden holiday. And frankly, if you ask me, it is really a mandatory holiday because you want people to vote. And our office was shut today. We want people to vote. Everybody, the government, it's kind of public policy to have people not work
Absolutely.
on
Sandeep
election
Parekh.
day. So
Point taken. Point taken, Sandeep Parekh. Let's also get on and speak to Amit Tandon, who's been patiently waiting for his turn. Mr. Amit Tandon, given that major Indian cities also have their assembly and parliamentary election without national market shutdowns, why does Mumbai continue to necessitate, this complete operational shutdown?
Hi, good evening. Look, I remember when the National Stock Exchange was started at that time, Dr. R.H. Patil had said that, look, we are a national stock exchange and not the Bombay Stock Exchange, which used to dominate the trading volumes at that stage, and said that, look, we are going to have closed down 3 days a year, 26th of January, 15th August, and 2nd October. Thereafter, I guess, two things have happened. One is that there has been some administrative convenience or administrative ease. We've kind of started to optimize for that rather than for market efficiency. But, and therefore, one of the things I'd still kind of go ahead and say is that, look, if the banks are closed and the broader market ecosystem is closed on a particular date, if we open the stock exchanges, there is some operational risk which is kind of going to go up. And therefore, just to kind of say that, look, I do believe that there is a strong case. We shouldn't have some of these events coming and shutting down the exchanges, particularly because they're national. But we also need to factor in the totality of what the second order impact can be. I know some of it is just legacy. When the Bombay Stock Exchange used to shut down for all public holidays, it was because, trading on the exchanges used to be on the floor of the trading floor. And it was difficult for people to show up. The public infrastructure was slowed down, etc., etc. Now, there's a completely different environment. So there's a much, much stronger case for us to kind of figure out what the number of holidays are and announce it. Once the market knows what the holidays are, they're kind of prepared for it rather than a little bit of ad hocism which creeps in on some of these instances. But as Sunil said, you can't wish it away, but all you can hope is that it's kind of minimized. And there is some understanding that, look, which elections, what thing, when will you close, when will you open, so that it's there's clarity for the market participants on some of these issues.
Definitely. Mr. Subramanian, I want to come to you for that. Is there a real economic cost due to these kind of, I would say, unplanned kind of holidays which are being declared? Is there a different kind of foreign participation, or retail investors cannot plan better? But is there a number we can put to it?
No, absolutely not. I don't think there's any economy. I think Sandeep said this, right? This has nothing to do with the real economy. This is only the second derivative of the financial markets. On one day, if you don't trade, and I read a tweet somewhere, I won't say who said it, who said it's probably going to prevent a further day of FII selling. So it's probably protected retail investors in that way, right? It's a different way to look at it. But the point is that you see the economic impact is absolutely zero. Now, if this were for example, you have a option expiry day. On that, there could be some resetting needed to be done, some price changes, but those are not economic events, right? They're all only market related events. And I think the market has to adjust. Like I said, if there is an act of God and this happens, you would have some consequences. It's just the same, and you just absorb it and go along. But I think crux of the issue is that, we are a democracy, right? And in a democracy, right, the importance given to the voting thing, I think in India, we need to make sure that people vote. So everything that can be done to help them to come to vote. Like you could say, why don't you give them an hour off? I read another theory on the, X platform saying, give them a couple of hours off to do. But if somebody is staying in Kalyan or Virar, you think that he has to vote near his house and he can't come all the way to the stock exchange and go back, right? For just in 2 hours. So there's I think as a nation, we are also trying to improve people's participating in their right to vote, to make it a duty to vote. And I think all these steps work towards making is a better democracy. That's a larger perspective. Now, the capital markets also suffer from this because I don't think as a nation we treat the capital market with the respect it deserves of wealth creation. We still tend to think of the people who are making money in the stock market, oh, they are kind of people who are creaming the thing, and we don't respect the money wealth creation the market does. And part of this is also coming from that, not from Nitin's perspective, but from the other people's responses saying, oh, why should the stock market get so much importance? That's not Nitin's perspective, but I'm just saying that we have to strike a balance between giving importance to the capital markets and giving importance to democracy. And this is not a problem that's going to get solved. We will have repeated recurrences. Of course, because Bombay houses the stock exchange, a local election in any other city is not going to affect. But within India, a lot of investors face these challenges. Take Pongal, which in the south for us is an important festival. The markets are normally not closed for Sankranti. Yeah. And so we have to come to work from in our offices if you're working related to the stock market, regardless of a festival. So you can go on cribbing about these kind of issues, that will never end.
Absolutely. Sunil, point made, but let me just come back to you, Sandeep. And I understood your point that there has been a huge hue and cry about, the markets being shut today. But now for a moment, I want you to wear the legal hat of yours and help us understand, can NSE and BSE legally challenge such government directives in court on the grounds that they disrupt essential, national economic infrastructure and harm market stability? Where the lawyers hadn't tell us now.
No, so I think the converse is actually true. If part of the system is shut today and you have if assume the banking system is partly shut, really to kind of allow this would actually increase the risk. So I'm not sure it's a great idea to kind of have a partially open system which will actually increase the risk in the system. So, I think second order impact is kind of minimal, unless somebody's planned something very important, it's not really significant. The economic impact is going to be minimal. Anyway, 99% is F&O trades, which can certainly be done the next working day. So, like I said, I think more harm would have been done if the markets were partly opened, rather than kind of shut today. So I think it's good because ultimately, the 2,000, 3,000 people who are employees of these two exchanges or three exchanges have to come to office, right? Its infrastructure doesn't work from anywhere. Employees do come. You need surveillance. You need people to kind of operate parts, even though it's electronic. There are several thousand people working in the system. Plus, all the brokers. It's obviously pretty heavy. Trading occurs within Mumbai, and therefore I think it's fair that we give democracy a chance and not increase the risk. So overall, I would say that I think it's not a bad decision to shut the market.
Yeah, Mr. Parekh, but there are 2 points. One, whether or not there should be trading holiday, that is a point of debate. People may have different views. But one thing that planning can be better is a unanimous kind of view which can come all across. And there I want to understand from you, Mr. Tandon, can a different kind of approach be taken on announcing these holidays a little advanced because these dates are known?
Sure, I don't think anyone's going to argue with it. What you want is a scheduled holiday is always better than any ad hoc disruption, because from a risk management lens, a known closure is preferable to thin liquidity, delayed settlements, or midday halts caused by, in this instance, it may be by election-related disruptions, which may or may not take place. So what you want to do is that, look, market integrity matters. A large part of that market integrity is some predictability there, and therefore that would be preferred to having as a rule, it's preferred to having some predictability rather than ad hocism with regard to the dates and closures.
All right, now let me just take and speak to you, Sunil. Subramanian, I haven't yet got a chance to ask you a question. Mr. Sunil Subramaniam, help us understand if operational staff and, people like us, we have been working in operational shifts so that, like my colleagues can go and vote, and then we take the baton and take the charge of our respective shifts, as, seen in previous elections in various organizations as well. So what is this persistent demand for a full day market off? Is it also an inertia from the exchanges to be more accommodating towards, the staff? What is it exactly?
No, see, I think you look at it, Sandeep mentioned this about 2,000, 3,000 people working in the exchanges, but there are probably 25,000 people working for stockbrokers who also have to come to work. So it's not just those 2,000, 3,000 people. And given what Mumbai is like in terms of the travel times, you have to vote near to your home and then travel to work. So it's not easy for a city like Mumbai, which is a very, traffic-wise challenged city, if I may say, that to do this, right? So the point is not, I think that it's clear I'm on the camp that this should be a holiday, but it should have been planned. On the moment the election was announced, the stock exchange and the regulatory authority should have said on that day the market will be closed. So that's quite a few months back, right? So that clarity is what we needed. This doing it suddenly is the challenge that is there. But otherwise, for right to vote to be converted into a duty to vote, you have to facilitate it to people. And all other assembly elections everywhere, you get the day off in the respective state. So I don't have a challenge with the holiday itself. And especially in Mumbai, I feel that a holiday is necessary because of the vast distances that people need to travel to go up and down. So it's very, very justified from a Mumbai city perspective, especially. So I don't think just taking a couple of hours of work or something, or you're saying make people come on staggered timings, you're then going to disrupt. And another aspect is we are only focusing on the market. Are the banks working or not working today, right? So has the NSE or BSE any control over what happens with the banks? So if the banks are not working and this part is working, again, it's the challenge, right? So there's no one single super regulator like an SEC which can say the entire financial system gets shut down.
Right, Mr. Subramanian, point well taken. Due to paucity of time, I'm interrupting you in between. But Mr. Subramanian, Mr. Parekh, as well as Mr. Amit Tandon, thank you so much for giving your time for this engaging discussion. But with this, it's time to take a very quick break. After the break, a lot coming up.